The day of the grand Viridionian ceremony arrived, and the palace shimmered with preparations. Crystalline banners fluttered in the wind, reflecting the sunlight in 1,000 colors, while the halls filled with nobles, dignitaries, and guests from distant planets. The air was alive with excitement, and Zelira felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety tightening in her chest. This ceremony was more than a celebration. It was a display of status, beauty, and influence. And she, the green-skinned princess who had once believed herself ugly, would be at its center. Zelira stood in her chamber, examining her reflection in the polished crystal mirror. Her garments were a delicate blend of green and silver, woven with blossoms and forest crystals, and her hair was braided into intricate patterns that glowed faintly under the morning light. She looked unlike any other princess in the palace, yet she no longer saw strangeness in her reflection. She saw uniqueness, confidence, and a beauty that came from within. Elias stood at the doorway, his dark eyes filled with warmth and pride. "You look incredible," he said softly, "not just because of your appearance, but because of who you are." Zelira took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I hope the others can see that," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I want them to understand, even if they don't accept it immediately." "They will see it," Elias replied. "And even if they don't, it doesn't change what's true about you." Hand in hand, they walked toward the grand hall. The ceremony was already underway, with nobles gathered in ornate robes, their faces a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and judgment. Zelira felt a familiar pang of fear, but she reminded herself of all she had learned: the courage to embrace her uniqueness, the beauty of being herself, and the knowledge that she was not defined by whispers or mockery. As they entered, heads turned. Some nobles whispered among themselves, their eyes narrowing at Zelira's green skin, the intricate blossoms in her hair, and the flowing garments that contrasted sharply with traditional Viridionian fashion. A few smiled, recognizing the confidence and grace that radiated from her. Zelira held her head high, walking with measured steps, her eyes steady and calm. Elias remained by her side, his presence a quiet reassurance. She felt the eyes of the crowd upon her, but instead of fear, she felt determination. She would not shrink, she would not hide. This was her moment to stand fully as herself. The ceremony began with the presentation of honors, awards, and gifts from various dignitaries. Zelira's turn approached, and she felt her pulse quicken. As she stepped forward, a group of nobles muttered under their breath, attempting to undermine her with subtle sneers and pointed comments. "Princess Zelira," one said, his voice sharp. "Is that a new fashion or a mistake?" Zelira met his gaze calmly. "It is who I am," she replied, her voice clear and unwavering, "and I am proud of it." The hall fell silent for a moment, the audacity of her words cutting through the usual murmurs. Some nobles frowned, taken aback by her confidence, while others began to nod in quiet approval. Elias gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, and Zelira felt a surge of strength. She was not alone, and she was no longer the frightened princess of the past. As the ceremony continued, Zelira was called to speak. She stepped onto the raised platform, the twin moon's light streaming through the crystal windows, casting silver patterns on the floor. She took a deep breath and began to address the audience. "I stand before you today not to conform," she said, her voice steady and strong, "but to celebrate what makes each of us unique. Beauty is not uniform, and worth is not measured by how closely we match one standard. Every one of us has something special, something valuable, something beautiful within us. We must see it, embrace it, and encourage it in others." A murmur ran through the hall. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably, challenged by her words, while others exchanged approving glances. Zelira continued, her confidence growing with each sentence. "I am proud of who I am," she said, looking directly at those who had mocked her. "And I hope that each of you can find the courage to be proud of yourselves too. Our diversity is our strength, and our uniqueness is our beauty." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the hall. Some nobles clapped hesitantly at first, unsure, while others joined enthusiastically. Zalira felt a warmth in her chest that was stronger than any fear she had ever known. She had spoken her truth, and it had been heard. After the ceremony, a group of dignitaries approached her, their expressions a mix of admiration and curiosity. "Princess Zalira," one said, bowing respectfully, "your words, they are wise and true. You have shown courage and insight beyond your years." Zalira smiled, her confidence solidifying. "Thank you. I only wish for all of us to see the value in our differences." Even some of the nobles who had previously mocked her approached, offering tentative smiles and quiet compliments. Zalira realized that change was beginning, slowly but surely. By embracing herself, she had inspired others to reconsider their own judgments and assumptions. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Elias and Zalira walked through the palace gardens, the soft glow of the moons reflecting off the streams and leaves. Zalira felt a sense of peace she had never known. The fear of judgment, the whispers of mockery, they no longer held power over her. "You did it," Elias said softly, his hand brushing hers. "You stood tall and they saw it. You've shown them what courage and confidence look like." Zalira laughed softly, the sound carrying lightly through the night air. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You helped me see myself differently." "You didn't need me to see it," he replied. "I just reminded you of the truth that was always inside you. You are remarkable, Zalira. Never forget it." Over the following days, the changes within the palace became more apparent. Zalira's confidence inspired young attendants, who began to express themselves more freely. Other nobles, initially skeptical, began to acknowledge her intelligence, insight, and creativity. Some even sought her guidance in matters of diplomacy and exploration. Zalira had become a quiet but powerful force of influence, not through manipulation or ambition, but through authenticity, courage, and the courage to embrace herself. Elias remained by her side, exploring new areas of the palace and its grounds with her. Together they studied rare plants, documented unusual wildlife, and shared stories of distant worlds. Their friendship grew deeper, a bond forged in trust, curiosity, and mutual respect. One afternoon, they discovered a hidden grove deep within the palace grounds. Crystalline flowers glowed softly, their petals reflecting the sunlight in a dazzling display. Streams wound around the trees, their gentle babble creating a symphony of sound. Zalira knelt beside a rare flower, tracing its delicate patterns with her fingers. "This place is incredible," Elias said, crouching beside her. "It feels magical." Zalira smiled, feeling the truth of his words. "It is, and it's ours to explore, to protect, and to understand. There's so much beauty in the world, if we only take the time to see it." Elias reached for her hand, holding it gently. "And you, Zalira, help me see it in a way I never could before. Your perspective, it's extraordinary." For the first time, Zalira allowed herself to feel the full weight of his admiration, not just for her appearance, but for her mind, her spirit, and her courage. She realized that true beauty was not just skin deep. It was found in how one viewed the world, in how one treated others, and in how one embraced one's own uniqueness. As the twin moons rose once more over Viridian, casting silver light over the palace gardens, Zalira felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. She had faced her fears, confronted judgment, and emerged stronger. The journey of self-discovery was far from over, but she knew now that she had the courage, the knowledge, and the support to continue. That night, Zalira reflected on the past weeks. She had grown in ways she had never imagined possible. She had learned that beauty was not something to be measured by others, but something to be recognized within oneself. She had discovered the power of authenticity, courage, and kindness. And most importantly, she had found someone who saw her, truly saw her, and inspired her to see herself in the same light. As she lay in her chambers, listening to the soft hum of the palace energy crystals, Zalira whispered to herself, "I am beautiful. I am strong. I am me." And in that simple affirmation, She felt the promise of a new beginning, one where she could embrace her uniqueness, inspire others, and explore the world with courage, curiosity, and the knowledge that she was truly remarkable. The sky over Viridian was a swirl of gold and green light, painting the dense forest and sparkling rivers in colors humans had no names for. Birds with translucent wings glided through the air, leaving trails of faint, luminescent dust behind them. In the heart of this strange and vibrant world, the palace of the Viridionian royal family stood tall, its crystalline towers glimmering like emeralds under the sun. Inside the palace, among the many rooms full of exotic decorations and polished floors, Princess Zalira sat alone by a large window, staring out at the gardens below. Her skin was the color of young leaves, bright green and soft, and her hair was the shade of deep forest moss. But to Zalira, none of this was beautiful. She often compared herself to the other nobles in the palace, whose skin shimmered with silvery tones or glowed faintly in the moonlight. Her own features, delicate as they were, felt strange and unworthy. She had heard whispers, subtle and sharp, about her odd appearance, and she had begun to believe them. No matter what she did, no matter how carefully she dressed or combed her hair, she felt out of place. "Why am I like this?" she muttered softly, her voice barely louder than the hum of the palace's energy crystals. She traced patterns on the glass with her fingertips, imagining a life outside the palace walls where she might not be judged for how she looked. She often dreamed of exploring the world beyond Viridian, of finding someone who could see her as more than just green skin and unusual eyes. The court was bustling with activity that day. Nobles dressed in flowing robes made of luminescent threads were arriving for the upcoming celebration of the planet's renewal cycle. Zalira felt a pang of anxiety at the thought of being among them. She knew they would whisper again, comparing her to others, questioning her worth. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt truly admired, truly appreciated. Her only comfort was the palace gardens. Unlike the halls of the palace, the gardens were alive with freedom. Strange flowers with petals like spun glass opened and closed in the rhythm of the sun. Rivers flowed in gentle loops, singing soft melodies. As they passed over stones shaped like crescent moons, Zalira often escaped here, walking barefoot on the cool grass, drawing pictures of plants no one else seemed to notice, and talking quietly to herself about the things that fascinated her. That morning, she had planned to sneak out to the edge of the palace grounds to watch a group of strangers who had arrived from beyond the stars. Humans, her attendants had whispered. Tall, two-legged creatures with pale skin and strange clothes. They moved awkwardly at first, stumbling over roots and rocks, but there was something in their energy that made Zalira curious. They carried tools and boxes filled with strange instruments that hummed and buzzed. They were here to study viridians, plants, the palace staff had explained, but Zalira suspected they were more than mere scientists. She slipped out quietly, her green cloak blending perfectly with the leaves and vines along the palace paths. Her heart raced with excitement and fear. She had never interacted with humans before, and she didn't know what to expect. But something about them called to her curiosity. Something about their unfamiliarity sparked a thrill she had not felt in years. In the forest near the palace edge, Zalira crouched behind a large fern and watched the humans work. One of them, a man taller than the others with dark hair and warm brown eyes, knelt beside a flowering bush, carefully examining the petals with a small glowing device. His hands were steady, gentle, and precise. He hummed softly to himself as he worked, a sound that seemed oddly comforting. Zalira's eyes widened. He was different from what she had imagined. He didn't look intimidating or strange. He looked kind. Something in the way he handled the plants made her feel that he respected them, that he respected life itself. She wanted to speak to him, to ask him questions, but the fear of being judged kept her silent. Suddenly, a loud snap of a branch echoed through the forest. One of the humans stumbled, tripping over a root. Zalira's eyes widened as she realized he was about to fall. Without thinking, she darted forward, her long legs carrying her swiftly through the underbrush. She reached him just in time, grabbing his arm and steadying him. "Oh, thank you," he said, his voice calm and gentle, as if nothing in the world could shake him. His eyes met hers for the first time. Zalira froze. He wasn't looking at her with disgust or surprise. He was looking at her with curiosity, and perhaps something warmer. You're okay," she said softly, unsure of what else to say. He nodded. "Thanks to you. I'm Elias." "Zalira," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know why she had said it. Perhaps it was the first time she had introduced herself to someone who did not already judge her. Elias smiled, faintly. "It's nice to meet you, Zalira." There was no mockery, no hesitation, just a simple, honest acknowledgement of her presence. For the first time in her life, Zalira felt seen. They began to talk cautiously, Zalira speaking about the plants in the forest, and Elias explaining the tools he used and the plants he had studied on other worlds. Zalira was amazed at how different humans were from the Viridionians she knew. They did not seem bound by the same rigid rules of appearance or status. They seemed free. As the sun moved higher in the sky, Zalira realized she had been talking for hours. She had laughed, asked questions, and even shared some of her sketches with Elias. He looked at her drawings with genuine interest, nodding and pointing out details she hadn't noticed. "You have an eye for detail," he said. "These are beautiful." Zalira's heart fluttered. No one had ever praised her for her work before. In the Viridionian court, her talents were often ignored, dismissed as childish or unimportant. But Elias, he seemed to value them. And then, almost casually, he said something that made her stop breathing for a moment. "And you're beautiful too, Zalira. Your skin, your eyes, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. It's amazing." Zalira's green face flushed. If her skin could flush that way. She had never heard such words directed at her before. Not from a Viridionian, not from anyone. She looked down, unsure how to respond. "Be beautiful," she stammered. "But I'm not like everyone else." "That's exactly why it's beautiful," Elias replied gently. "Uniqueness is a kind of beauty, maybe the rarest kind. You shouldn't hide it." For the first time, Zalira felt a tiny seed of hope grow inside her. Perhaps she had been wrong about herself all along. Perhaps beauty was not about fitting in or looking like everyone else. Perhaps it was about being true to oneself. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Zalira showed Elias hidden waterfalls, rare flowers, and secret paths through the forest that only she knew. They shared stories of their lives, and Zalira found herself laughing more than she had in years. She felt alive in a way she had never imagined possible. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in deep shades of red and violet, Zalira knew she had to return to the palace. She felt a pang of sadness at leaving Elias behind, but also a strange sense of strength. She had experienced something she had never thought possible, a connection, an understanding, and a recognition of her worth. "Will I see you again?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. "I hope so," Elias said with a smile. "There's still so much I want to learn about your world, and from you." Zalira nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest she had never felt before. As she ran back to the palace under the soft glow of Viridian's twin moons, she felt different. She felt lighter. And for the first time she dared to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she was more than the shadows of judgment that had followed her all her life. That night in her chamber, Zalira stared at her reflection in the polished crystal mirror. For years she had avoided it, unwilling to face the green skin and unusual eyes that made her feel alien in her own world. But now she looked at herself, and for the first time, saw something different. She saw potential. She saw uniqueness. She saw beauty. And somewhere deep inside she knew that the human who had seen her that way would not be the last to recognize it. As the moons of Viridian rose high in the sky, casting gentle light across the palace gardens, Zalira whispered to herself, "Maybe I am beautiful." And in that simple, quiet admission, a new chapter of her life began, one filled with hope, curiosity, and the promise of discovery. The morning sun cast long, golden streaks across the palace gardens, and Zalira woke with a fluttering sense of excitement. The events of the previous day replayed in her mind like a vivid dream. She could still hear Elias's voice, gentle and sincere, praising her uniqueness, telling her she was beautiful. For the first time, she felt a small spark of confidence. But even as she dressed and prepared to leave her chambers, doubts crept in. What if the humans found her strange or unworthy? What if she embarrassed herself in front of Elias or the others? She pushed the worries aside. Curiosity outweighed fear now, stronger than it had ever been. With careful steps, she left her chambers and made her way through the palace corridors, slipping past the guards without being noticed. She was determined to see Elias again. Elias was already waiting near the edge of the palace gardens, kneeling, beside a patch of glowing flowers. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, and his warm brown eyes lit up when he saw her. "Good morning, Zalira," he said with a smile. "I thought I might find you here. There's so much to learn about these plants." Zalira felt her heart beat faster. She nodded, too shy to speak at first, but she stepped closer, and soon they were walking together through the forest paths, talking about plants, rivers, and the strange animals that flitted through the trees. Elias asked questions with genuine interest, and Zalira answered as best as she could, showing him her sketches and notes. "You really notice things most people don't," Elias said, examining one of her drawings closely. "These details, the patterns, the shapes, they're incredible. You have an amazing eye for this." Zalira's green face flushed slightly, but she smiled. Praise had always been rare for her, and now it felt like sunlight on a cold day. As the day went on, Elias suggested they explore beyond the palace gardens. Zalira hesitated. The palace grounds were vast, but the forest beyond was unfamiliar and dangerous. Yet she also felt a thrill at the thought of discovering new places with someone who appreciated her and her world. "Will King, you come with me?" Elias asked, holding out his hand. Zalira took it without thinking. The warmth of his hand felt reassuring, grounding her as they walked through unfamiliar paths. Birds with shimmering feathers sang overhead, and the leaves whispered secrets as the wind passed through them. The forest seemed alive, and Zalira felt connected to it in a way she never had before. They came to a clearing where a small waterfall cascaded into a sparkling pool. The water was so clear that the stones below seemed to glow faintly. Zalira gasped at the beauty of it, realizing she had never noticed this hidden place before. It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias nodded. "It is. And so is the person who brought me here." His words caught her off guard. She looked at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. I just wanted to show you a place I like," she said softly, almost embarrassed. He smiled, his eyes warm. "And that's why it's special. Because it's yours. Because you saw it." For a long moment they sat by the pool in silence, listening to the water, feeling the wind. Zalira felt something inside her shift. She had always believed that beauty and worth were measured by the opinions of others, by the approval of her peers in the palace. But here, with Elias, she realized that there was another way to see herself, through the eyes of someone who valued her for who she was, not how she looked compared to everyone else. As the sun climbed higher, they explored more of the forest, together. Zalira showed Elias rare flowers that glowed faintly at night, strange fruits with intricate patterns, and trees that bent and twisted in impossible shapes. Elias, in turn, shared stories of Earth, his home planet, describing oceans, forests, and mountains. Zalira listened, fascinated by how different and yet similar their worlds were. "You know," Elias said as they rested beneath a tree, "humans often think that beauty is only what we are used to seeing. But the truth is, anything can be beautiful, if you take the time to see it." Zalira looked at him, her heart swelling. She wanted to believe him, to take his words to heart, but old doubts still lingered. But people here don't see me that way. They whisper about me. Elias reached out and gently touched her hand. Then maybe it's time to start seeing yourself through your own eyes, not theirs. You have a kind heart, a sharp mind, and a soul that's curious and brave. That's beautiful, Zalira. That's real beauty. Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not even her own family. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of hope and disbelief. They continued walking, and soon they found a patch of rare blue orchids. Zalira knelt to examine them, running her fingers over their delicate petals. Elias watched her, fascinated. You have a way of seeing life that's extraordinary, he said. You notice things most people ignore. That's a kind of magic. Zalira laughed softly. Magic? I don't feel magical. You may not feel it, but it's there, Elias replied. And it's in you, not just the flowers or the forest. You bring them to life with the way you see them. For hours they explored together, sharing laughter and stories. Zalira began to realize that she was learning something new, not just about plants and the forest, but about herself. She began to feel a sense of pride in her knowledge, in her ability to share it, and in her very existence. As evening approached, they found a quiet hill overlooking the palace. The twin moons of Viridian began to rise, casting a soft silver light across the forest below. Zalira felt a sense of peace she had never known. Zalira, Elias said quietly, do you know why I think you're beautiful? She looked at him, hesitant but curious. Tell me. Because you're real. Because you're yourself. You don't try to be like anyone else, and that honesty, that courage, it shines. That's something rare in any world. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. I've never heard that before, she whispered. You deserve to hear it, he said simply. And not just from me. You deserve to believe it for yourself. For the first time, Zalira felt a small spark of true confidence. She realized that beauty was not about fitting in or meeting someone else's standards. It was about embracing who she was, celebrating her uniqueness, and allowing others to see the real her. As they walked back toward the palace, she felt lighter, freer. The forest, the plants, the wind, all of it seemed brighter, more alive. And she felt a growing certainty that her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. The next few days passed in a blur of secret meetings and quiet adventures. Zalira and Elias explored hidden valleys, studied rare plants, and shared stories of their worlds. Each encounter strengthened Zalira's confidence and made her see herself in a new light. She began to experiment with her appearance, trying subtle changes in her hair and clothing, not to fit in but to express herself. Some palace staff began to notice her transformation. She carried herself with a newfound grace, and there was a brightness in her eyes that had been absent before. Some whispered in admiration, while others murmured jealousy. But Zalira no longer cared. She was beginning to understand that her worth was not determined by gossip or judgment. One afternoon, while exploring a hidden grove, Elias asked her to sit by a small stream. He pulled out a sketchbook and began drawing, inviting her to do the same. Zalira hesitated, but then she allowed herself to draw freely, capturing the delicate shapes of the flowers, the curve of the river, and the play of light through the leaves. You're getting better every day, Elias said, glancing at her work. And you're learning to see the world, and yourself, differently. Zalira smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. I think I am. Elias reached out, brushing a strand of moss-green hair from her face. You are beautiful, Zalira, don't ever forget it. That night, as Zalira lay in her chambers, she thought about the forest, about Elias, and about the strange and wonderful world she had been given. She realized that beauty was not something others could give her. It was something she could discover, For herself, nurtured by kindness, curiosity, and courage. And for the first time in her life, Zelira felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. She had found someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who believed in her, and through that she was beginning to see herself in a new light. The green-skinned princess who had once thought she was ugly began to understand that her uniqueness was a gift, and that the journey of embracing it had only just begun. As the moons rose again over Viridian, their soft silver light reflected in her bright green eyes, Zelira whispered to herself, Maybe I am beautiful, and maybe I can finally believe it. With that thought, she drifted to sleep, dreaming of forests, hidden waterfalls, and a future filled with wonder, courage, and the promise of discovery. The days on Viridian passed with a strange, comforting rhythm. The twin moons rose and fell, the rivers sang their endless songs, and the forests whispered secrets that only the patient could hear. Zelira felt herself changing in ways she had never imagined. Her steps were lighter, her eyes brighter, and for the first time she noticed the small joys of life, the way sunlight danced on the leaves, the faint glow of flowers at night, the soft hum of the wind through the trees. Elias remained her constant companion. Each day they explored hidden valleys, rare groves, and secret waterfalls that even the palace staff did not know existed. Zelira shared her knowledge of plants and herbs, while Elias told stories of distant worlds, of human cities, oceans, and mountains. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, a blend of curiosity and genuine admiration. Zelira found herself laughing, more freely, her voice no longer a hesitant whisper but confident and clear. Yet even as her confidence grew, doubt still lingered. She could not forget the whispers in the palace, the subtle glances of nobles who seemed to measure her worth by her appearance. Though she had begun to see herself through Elias's eyes, she knew that the court might never accept her the way he did. And still, she pressed forward. She wanted to learn, to grow, and to claim her own identity. One morning, Zelira decided to experiment with her appearance. She had collected soft fabrics from the forest and woven them into flowing garments of green and silver, colors that complemented her skin rather than hiding it. She braided her moss-colored hair with small blossoms she had picked at dawn, creating intricate patterns that reflected her love of nature. She stood before her crystal mirror, studying herself carefully. She felt a flutter of anxiety. Would anyone see her like this and laugh? Would she embarrass herself? But then she remembered Elias's words. You don't need to be like anyone else. That honesty, that courage, it shines. Taking a deep breath, she allowed herself a small smile. She looked beautiful not because others told her so, but because she had chosen to embrace who she was. For the first time, she felt her reflection matched the person she knew herself to be inside. Elias arrived at the palace gates shortly after, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. Zelira, he said softly, you look incredible. She laughed, a sound like soft wind chimes. Do I really? Yes, he replied firmly. More than you can imagine, you're not hiding anymore and it suits you. They spent the day walking through the palace gardens, visiting areas that had always been off-limits to Zelira. Each new discovery thrilled her, and with Elias by her side, she felt a sense of freedom she had never known. Birds with translucent wings swooped overhead, and the gentle rustle of leaves seemed to cheer her on. But as they wandered deeper into the gardens, they encountered a group of young nobles. At first, the nobles seemed polite, but soon their comments grew sharp, their words dripping with subtle mockery. Princess Zelira, one sneered, are those flowers part of your outfit, or did you just roll in the garden again? Zelira's chest tightened. She could feel her confidence wavering. But she glanced at Elias, who stood beside her, his presence steady and protective. She remembered his words about courage, honesty, and uniqueness. I chose these, she said quietly, but firmly, because they reflect who I am. The nobles laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the trees. But Zelira held her ground. She felt something she had never felt before, the knowledge that their opinion did not define her. Elias smiled encouragingly, giving her the strength to stand taller, to let her voice carry without fear. "You are more than your appearance," Elias said softly, speaking for her as much as to her. "Your choices, your mind, your courage, and those are what make you remarkable." For a brief moment, the nobles seemed taken aback. They had expected her to shrink, to retreat into herself. Instead, she held her ground, her green eyes shining, with a quiet determination. They left without another word, and Zalira felt a thrill of triumph. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to her. As evening fell, Zalira and Elias sat by a quiet stream. The water reflected the silver light of the twin moons, and the forest seemed to hold its breath around them. Zalira's thoughts wandered to her reflection, her garments, and the way she had faced the nobles. "Do you see?" Elias asked gently, as if reading her mind. "This is you. Not the whispers, not the judgments. You." "I think I'm beginning, too," she admitted. "But it's hard. So many years of hearing the wrong things. It's not easy to forget them." "You don't have to forget them," Elias said. "You just have to decide what's true for you. And what's true is that you're extraordinary, Zalira. You just need to see it for yourself." Over the next few weeks, Zalira continued to explore her self-expression. She tried new hairstyles, experimented with subtle changes in the colors and patterns of her garments, and even adorned herself with delicate jewelry made from forest crystals. Each day she felt more comfortable, more confident, more herself. But the palace was not entirely kind. Some nobles began to gossip more openly, attempting to undermine her at every turn. They whispered about her green skin, her unusual features, and the way she seemed to disregard their traditions. Zalira could hear the comments, but she chose to focus on the people who saw her differently. Elias, the young attendants who admired her curiosity, and the rare noble who offered genuine friendship. One day, Zalira decided to visit a hidden valley deep in the forest, a place she had discovered long ago but never fully explored. Elias accompanied her, eager to see what wonders awaited. The valley was a secret paradise, filled with tall, crystalline flowers that glowed faintly in the shade, trees with leaves that changed color with every breeze, and small streams that sang in perfect harmony. "This is incredible," Elias said, kneeling beside a cluster of glowing blooms. "I've never seen anything like this." Zalira smiled, feeling pride swell in her chest. "I've seen it many times, but I'm always discovering something new. That's the magic of this place." As they wandered, they came across a small group of young aliens from the palace, watching them from a distance. At first, Zalira froze, fearing mockery, but then she remembered how far she had come, how much she had learned about herself. "Hello?" she called, stepping forward with confidence. "Do you want to join us?" The young aliens looked surprised. They had expected her to shy away, to hide, but here she was, smiling, inviting them to share in her discovery. Slowly, they approached, and soon they were exploring the valley together. Zalira felt a joy unlike anything she had known, sharing the beauty of her world, her knowledge, and herself without fear of judgment. Elias watched her, admiration in his eyes. "You're changing things, Zalira," he said quietly. "Not just for yourself, but for others too." "I'm trying," she admitted, though she knew it was more than trying. She was living, embracing herself fully, and encouraging others to do the same. As the moons rose high in the sky, casting a silver glow over the valley, Zalira and Elias sat by a small waterfall. The water sparkled like liquid stars, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of nocturnal creatures. "Do you ever get scared?" Zalira asked suddenly, her voice soft. "Of course," Elias replied. "Every day. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move forward despite it." Zalira thought about the nobles, their whispers, and her own past insecurities. She realized that every step she had taken, every experiment with her appearance, every act of courage was moving her forward. She was no longer the shy, insecure princess who hid from the world. She was someone who could face fear, embrace uniqueness, and inspire others to do the same. I want to keep learning, she said. About the forest, about the plant, and about myself. Elias smiled. Then we will. Together. Over the next few days, Zalira became more involved in the palace and the world beyond. She began teaching young aliens about the plants and creatures she had studied, sharing her love of knowledge and exploration. She started to gain allies among the palace staff, people who admired her courage, creativity, and intellect. Her confidence grew steadily. She no longer feared the whispers of judgment. She knew that her worth was not determined by others but by herself. And every time Elias praised her, every time she explored a new corner of the forest, every time she shared her discoveries with others, that worth was reinforced. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise together, Elias turned to her. Zalira, you've come so far. I've never met anyone like you. You see the world differently, and that makes you special. Zalira felt a warmth in her chest. She had heard similar words from him before, but now they carried deeper meaning. She was no longer fragile or unsure. She had grown into herself, learning to embrace her uniqueness, and the world was beginning to notice. Thank you, Elias, she said softly, for believing in me, when I couldn't believe in myself. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. You don't need me to believe in you anymore. You already do. I'm just here to remind you of what you already know. Zalira smiled, feeling a sense of peace and confidence that she had never known. She was no longer just the green-skinned princess who thought she was ugly. She was a young woman who had discovered her own beauty, courage, and strength, and she was ready to face whatever the future held. As the forest settled into the quiet of night, Zalira looked at her reflection in a small pool of water. The sun rose over the Xylarian palace, bathing the towers in soft golden light. The Empire had known peace for weeks, but Aiden sensed that a greater challenge still loomed. He had faced threats, rebellions, and assassination attempts, yet the most important battles were not against enemies but against fear, doubt, and misunderstanding. The princess approached him in the morning, her golden eyes clear and steady. There is news from the council, she said. A rival faction is planning a large-scale attack on one of the outer colonies. They intend to undermine my rule and provoke unrest. Aiden nodded. Then we must act quickly. We cannot allow them to spread fear or chaos. Together, they assembled a team of the Empire's finest soldiers and strategists. Aiden contributed not only his human perspective, but also his ability to adapt under pressure. The princess, with her intelligence and authority, coordinated the operation with precision. They moved as a unit, their partnership seamless, their trust unspoken but absolute. The journey to the colony was tense. The rival faction had fortified key positions and prepared traps. Aiden studied their movements, predicting their strategies, while the princess used her knowledge of local terrain and politics to gain leverage. Every decision mattered. Every delay could cost lives. When they arrived, the situation was worse than expected. The rebels had already begun to incite fear among the colonists, and loyal soldiers were struggling to maintain control. Aiden and the princess immediately coordinated defensive measures. Divide the forces, Aiden instructed. One group contains the rebels near the outer gates. The other protects civilians in key facilities. Move quickly and decisively. The princess followed his plan without hesitation, issuing commands that inspired confidence among the soldiers. Her presence reassured the colonists, while Aiden's tactics neutralized the immediate threat. As the battle unfolded, a group of rebels attempted to capture the princess. Aiden reacted instantly, positioning himself between her and the attackers. Using both skill and strategy, he disarmed and subdued them, demonstrating not only courage but also the clever thinking that had earned him her trust. The princess, observing his actions, felt something she had never felt before: complete reliance on someone other than herself. She realized that Aiden was no longer just a human she had been forced to marry. He was her partner, her equal, and her protector. After the conflict was resolved, the colony was safe and the rebels were captured. The colonists cheered for the princess, but their admiration quickly extended to Aiden. His bravery, intelligence, and composure under pressure had earned their respect. Back at the palace, the council formally acknowledged their success. The princess stood beside Aiden as she addressed the assembly. "This human," she said, her voice strong and clear, "has shown courage, wisdom, and loyalty beyond what anyone expected. He is not only my partner in duty but my equal in thought and action. Let his deeds stand as a testament to the potential of unity between our species." Aiden felt a rush of pride and humility. He had come to this palace as a stranger, a pawn in political games. Now he stood as a respected figure, recognized for his character, skill, and humanity. The princess turned to him after the assembly, her expression soft but resolute. "I misjudged you at first," she admitted. "I thought humans were weak, impulsive, and untrustworthy. You have shown me otherwise. I value you, Aiden, more than I can express." Aiden met her gaze, his heart steady despite the intensity of the moment. "I never wanted to disappoint you, but you have also taught me much about this world, its people, and the strength required to lead. I respect and value you as well." For the first time, words felt insufficient to describe the bond between them. They had shared danger, trust, and victories. They had learned from each other, relied on each other, and proven that their partnership could overcome any challenge. In the days that followed, their relationship continued to evolve. They moved freely within the palace, side by side, making decisions, observing court matters, and participating in the life of the empire. Nobles who had once doubted Aiden now sought his counsel, recognizing the wisdom he brought from his human perspective. The princess began to rely on him not only for strategy and protection, but also for companionship. She shared her hopes for the future of the empire, her dreams for a world where humans and Xylarians could coexist as equals. Aiden listened, offering insights, suggestions, and encouragement. One quiet evening, they walked together through the palace gardens. The glowing flora bathed them in soft light, and the city below shimmered like a field of stars. The princess spoke, her voice thoughtful and calm. "I once thought this marriage was a burden, a necessity. Now, I see it differently. You have changed not only my perception of humans, but my perception of partnership itself." Aiden smiled gently. "I feel the same. What began as duty has become something more, something real. We have faced challenges together, learned from each other, and built trust. That is worth more than any title or ceremony." Her golden eyes met his, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then perhaps this union is not one of obligation but of choice, not one of convenience but of mutual respect and trust. I choose to stand with you, Aiden, not because I must, but because I want to. Aiden felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, pride, and deep affection. "And I choose to stand with you, princess, in duty, in thought, and in life, together." From that moment, their relationship transformed completely. The formalities of marriage were no longer a barrier. They had become partners in every sense of the word. They faced challenges side by side, shared victories and defeats, and gradually built a life of trust, respect, and genuine connection. The empire itself began to notice the change. The collaboration between human and Xylarian inspired hope among the citizens and respect among the nobles. Rumors of their bond spread not as scandal, but as a model of cooperation, courage, and understanding. Over time, Aiden and the princess continued to strengthen both their personal relationship and the stability of the empire. They trained together, strategized together, and faced new threats as a united front. Their bond became unshakable, a source of strength for themselves and for those who relied on them. One evening, standing atop the palace tower, they gazed out at the sprawling city below. The stars above mirrored the lights of the empire, and a gentle wind stirred around them. The princess spoke softly, her voice filled with warmth. "We have come far, Aiden. From strangers bound by duty to partners bound by trust. I never imagined this, but I am grateful." Aiden took her hand, feeling the strength and resolve in her grasp. I am grateful as well. You have taught me much about courage, wisdom, and the power of trust. Together, we can face whatever comes next." The princess smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that reflected the bond they had forged. "Then let us face the future together. Not as a human and a Xylarian, not as forced allies, but as equals, partners, and friends." And so, in the quiet glow of the palace lights and the distant shimmer of stars, Aiden and the princess stood side by side. They had faced fear, danger, and doubt. They had built trust, learned from each other, and forged a bond that transcended duty. What had begun as a forced marriage had transformed into a partnership of strength, courage, and mutual respect. A partnership that would shape the future of both the human and Xylarian worlds. For the first time, the princess felt truly understood and supported. For the first time, Aiden felt that he belonged, not only in the palace but in her life, in the empire, and in a future filled with possibilities. Together they were stronger than any threat, wiser than any advisor, and united in a bond that nothing could break. And as the night deepened, the city shimmered below, a living testament to the power of trust, courage, and the extraordinary partnership between a human and the youngest alien princess. The days that followed the ceremony were filled with subtle changes throughout the palace. Zelira moved through the halls with newfound confidence, her head held high, her steps measured but light. The whispers and sneers that had once haunted her seemed distant now, replaced by glances of curiosity, respect, and even admiration. The world she had feared was beginning to accept her, not because she tried to fit in, but because she had embraced herself fully. Elias was always at her side, his presence a constant source of strength. They explored the palace gardens, studied rare plants, and wandered through hidden groves that shimmered with soft natural light. But beyond the physical beauty of the forest, there was a deeper connection growing between them, a bond built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. One afternoon, as they walked along a winding path lined with crystal blossoms, Elias spoke softly. "Zelira, do you realize what you've done?" She looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "You've changed the palace. You've changed the way people see you and themselves. By embracing who you are, you've shown others that they can do the same. That courage, that authenticity, it spreads." Zelira blushed slightly but smiled. "I didn't do it to impress anyone. I just wanted to be myself." "And that's exactly why it works," Elias replied. "When someone is genuine, it inspires others. People notice the truth in your actions." Zelira felt a warmth in her chest. She had never imagined that being herself could have such an impact. For years she had hidden, doubted herself, and believed the lies whispered behind her back. But now she was discovering the extraordinary power that came from self-acceptance. The palace soon began to change in ways that surprised even the nobles. Young attendants who had once been shy and hesitant began to experiment with their own self-expression, drawing inspiration from Zelira's confidence. Scholars and diplomats, impressed by her intelligence and courage, sought her counsel in matters of exploration and diplomacy. Even some of the nobles who had mocked her now approached cautiously, offering advice, friendship, or tentative acknowledgement. Zelira found herself enjoying the role of quiet influence. She did not seek power or attention, but she had discovered that living authentically allowed her to affect others in meaningful ways. It was a responsibility she accepted with grace, knowing that her actions could inspire more than her words ever could. One evening, Elias led her to a hidden grove illuminated by the soft glow of bioluminescent flowers. The air was filled with the gentle hum of insects and the rustle of leaves, and a small waterfall sparkled under the twin moon's light. "This place is beautiful," Zelira whispered, kneeling beside the water to admire the shimmering reflection of the flowers. "It is," Elias agreed, kneeling beside her. "But it's even more beautiful because you're here to see it." Zelira felt her heart flutter. She realized, with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, that she had come to care for Elias in ways that went beyond friendship. His admiration, kindness, and genuine respect had grown into something deeper. She could feel it in the way her chest warmed when he smiled at her, in the way her thoughts lingered on him even when they were apart. Elias looked at her with intensity, yet softness in his eyes. "Zalira, there's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. "You've changed so much in these weeks. I've watched you grow, face your fears, and embrace yourself, and in doing so, you've shown me a new way to see the world. I care for you, Zalira, more than I can put into words." Zalira's breath caught. Her heart raced, a mixture of joy, fear, and hope. Elias," she began, her voice trembling. "I feel the same. I've never known someone who sees me, really sees me, the way you do." He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Then we don't need to hide from it. We can explore this together. We can face the future side by side." For the first time, Zalira allowed herself to fully embrace her feelings. She leaned slightly toward him, her green eyes reflecting the silver moonlight. "Together," she whispered. As they stood there, hand in hand, the forest seemed to hum around them in celebration, the glowing flowers, the soft babble of the waterfall, the gentle sway of the trees. All of it felt alive, as if the world itself acknowledged the bond forming between them. The days that followed were filled with new discoveries. Zalira, Andy, Elias explored uncharted regions of the palace grounds and the surrounding forests. They mapped hidden valleys, studied rare plants and animals, and documented natural phenomena that had long been forgotten. Zalira's knowledge and curiosity inspired others to join in, creating small teams of explorers who looked to her as a guide, a teacher, and a friend. One afternoon, while exploring a secluded canyon, they came across a rare plant with luminous petals that changed color depending on the observer's mood. Zalira knelt to examine it, fascinated. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "It reflects what's inside the person who looks at it." Elias observed her carefully. "Just like you," he said softly. "You've reflected courage, kindness, and authenticity, and it's changing the people around you." Zalira smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that her journey had transformed not only her own life but also the world around her. By embracing herself, she had inspired others to do the same, proving that true strength and beauty came from within. News of her influence spread throughout the kingdom. Aliens who had once doubted her abilities now sought her guidance in matters of science, diplomacy, and exploration. She became a symbol of courage, self-acceptance, and innovation. Yet Zalira remained humble, never letting admiration cloud her purpose. She understood that her growth was ongoing, and that each day offered new lessons to learn. One evening, as the twin moons rose in unison, Zalira and Elias returned to the palace gardens. The soft glow of the moons illuminated the crystal flowers, creating a magical atmosphere. Zalira paused to reflect on everything that had happened, the doubts she had once held, the whispers of judgment, and the journey of self-discovery that had brought her to this moment. "I've come so far," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "I never thought I could feel like this. Confident, strong, beautiful in my own way." Elias smiled, taking her hand once more. "You've always had it inside you, Zalira. You just needed to see it for yourself." She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. "And you helped me see it. I can't thank you enough." "You don't need to," he said, brushing a strand of moss-green hair from her face. "Just continue being yourself. That's all I could ever want." Their bond deepened with each passing day. They shared laughter, discoveries, and quiet moments of reflection. Zalira realized that true beauty was not only in appearances, but in courage, compassion, and the willingness to embrace one's uniqueness. And Elias, by seeing and appreciating her true self, had helped her unlock a strength she had never known. Over time, Zalira became a respected leader in the palace, guiding others with wisdom and empathy. She encouraged exploration, celebrated diversity, and fostered a culture where individuality was honored rather than judged. The once whispered mockery of her green skin became a distant memory, replaced by admiration for her knowledge, courage, and heart. One day, while exploring a hidden waterfall with Elias, she paused to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. "I used to think I was ugly," she said softly, watching the water cascade in sparkling arcs. "I never imagined I could feel this strong, this beautiful." Elias stood beside her, his hand brushing hers gently. "Beauty isn't about what others say or see. It's about embracing who you are, and you've done that, Zelira. You've become everything you were meant to be." Tears pricked her eyes, but she smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." "And you didn't," he replied firmly. "You did it yourself. I only reminded you of your own power." As the twin moons reflected in the waterfall, Zelira felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced fear, judgment, and doubt, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. She had discovered the beauty within herself, and in doing so, she had inspired change in the world around her. In the days and years that followed, Zelira continued to explore, learn, and lead. She became a symbol of courage, individuality, and self-acceptance. The palace, once a place of judgment and whispers, transformed into a haven of creativity, knowledge, and respect for uniqueness. And through it all, Elias remained by her side, a constant companion, friend, and partner. Together they explored uncharted territories, shared discoveries, and built a life filled with wonder, adventure, and love. Zelira, the green-skinned princess who had once believed herself ugly, had grown into a woman who knew her worth, embraced her uniqueness, and inspired others to do the same. She had discovered that true beauty came from within, that courage could change the world, and that love and friendship were the greatest gifts of all. As the twin moons rose high over Viridian, their silver light reflected in Zelira's bright green eyes, she whispered to herself with a smile that reached her heart, "I am beautiful, I am strong, I am me." And in that simple truth, she found the freedom, joy, and fulfillment she had long sought. The journey had begun with doubt, fear, and whispers of judgment. It ended with confidence, discovery, and the radiant light of self-acceptance. Zelira had become not just a princess of Viridian, but a beacon of hope, a reminder that embracing one's true